Hello everyone and welcome to another Third Aged Reforged. My name is Cannon Fodder and I bring you the second of the scenarios made by WK for the Rise of the Witch King. As you remember previously, the Witch King was assaulting the lands of the Free Peoples of Arnor to break up their sort of divide, and this time he's going to be assaulting the Misty Mountains. And this is a scenario which I played in, so you can see me here, and I've got the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. And I'm going to very quickly go over the army compositions as best I can. What I would say is if you like trolls and trolls on troll action, this has got a lot of trolls in it. I've also played around a little bit with my settings, so hopefully I'll be a little bit louder for you guys. Hopefully the visuals will be a little bit better, and you'll have a bit better viewing experience, and this won't go completely terribly. The armies are relatively similar, so what I'm going to do is only really call out anything that's particularly interesting, as most of the armies have very similar forces in them. So, we can see here that I have some heavy goblin infantry backed up with some goblin halberds. So for those that want to see them, there they are. What I would say is that I'm sorry my scroll roll is a bit noisy. I know from previous videos that I have a noisy scroll roll. We have the goblin archers. We have my aforementioned cave trolls. I have my my goblin king bodyguard here. More cave trolls. I do have some mountain trolls as well. I got some black uruks of the mountain here, so you can see them there. Looking very fine indeed. I have some heavy goblin infantry, and I have some white uruk fearmongers. There you go. Look at these guys. They've got like a mouth of Sauron on them almost. Look at those guys. Look at them. Big cheesy grins. Our forces are divided, as are the attackers, by the way, so we're going to be a little bit all over the place. So I have some heavy goblin infantry here, backed up with some Starga skirmishers, followed up with some goblin archers here, who have some spikes I'll put down shortly, and some more heavy goblin infantry. I'm going to be supported with some additional forces that I have down in this large valley here, which is some mountain trolls, some more mountain trolls, some more mountain trolls, some cave trolls, some war skirmishers, and some mountain trolls. So it might look like there's a lot of trolls, as I said before. My ally here, we've got Crimson, but I'm also supported by WK. Crimson has a very similar army to me. There's nothing particularly to call out that's very special about his forces. He has a couple more halberds than I do. He has some black uruks of the mountain. But in a similar vein to myself, he's spread all over the place. So he actually has some forces back here. If we just scoot over here, you can see that he has some of his bodyguard. He has some archers up on this position here. Some more fearmongers, some more heavies. And you can see lots of trolls. He has some Bork's champions as well as his warg riders. And I'm supported as well, like I said, by WK. He has his own Goblin King. He's got his own riders, spears. I mean, the only real difference is in my force doesn't have the heavy warg riders. WK also has a force over here into this like sort of mountain pass. He got some halberds, some infantry, some archers. So pretty much a very similar army to what you'd expect, and of course more cave trolls. He does have a little expeditionary force here. I think this is Crimson's Blackback Mountain Berserkers that are just holding out here by themselves. Although for how long is anybody's guess. And we have some final forces just over to one side. So we've got some Dunland Spearmen and some Mountain Orc Berserkers and so forth. So you can see these guys here joining their goblin counterparts. Perhaps they are mercenaries or they've just been brought into the ways of villainy. There is no rules on this battle except for if the Witch King dies, the attackers fail and lose. So I'm just going to take a moment to have a look at the map so you can see here as we start moving up to full speed. This map is a custom map by WK. I'm going to be spinning around this map relatively quickly, unfortunately, because of the way that the battle goes and because of how fast-paced it is. We're going to be jumping around a lot. When the battle starts, I'll try and pick out the enemy forces and let you know what they have, and we'll go from there. What I would say is you can see here that I'm sandwiched on two sides here, and you can see that WK is sandwiched on these sides here with the final force in the centre. These sort of reserve forces here will have a little bit of time getting to the front lines, but nothing too crazy. What I would say is this is the second time that I've recorded this video, so apologies if for any reason I'm less enthusiastic than normal because an hour of my life was spent having to be deleted. The issue of that has now been resolved, and hopefully this will go up perfectly fine. That was an issue with one of the recordings I did. What I would say is that this is yet another testing of the scenario. This is not the full release scenario. This is more of a behind the scenes of what to expect with the scenario for the Rise of the Witch King as he goes forward. And you can see obviously his arrivals and his maneuvering to retake his lands and battlefields to assault the sort of either the light-sided nations to destroy them, or to bring the evil nations under his will once more. So there are obviously testings, there are obviously changes that come in, and you'll see as time goes on that the final version, it will not always be the version that we've seen. What I would say about this battlefield is that it might look like we have a lot of trolls, but I assure you the opponents have just as many snow trolls. Now, originally when we were doing this, I thought, and most people thought, that the snow trolls were going to absolutely ruin us. And what I mean by that is that on paper, the mountain trolls and cave trolls are terrible in terms of going up against the snow troll. But what they do have is they have something which is a hidden stat, which is to do with their mass. So keep an eye on how the mountain and cave trolls do against the snow trolls, just due to numbers and mass, and see what you think. I think you'll be surprised, and I think you'll see it's an interesting showdown between the two forces. One which on paper doesn't look like it should do, without giving too much away that I already have done. Just going to also take an opportunity now to thank everybody who's downloaded the mod. We're now up to over 5,000 downloads for the new version. So thank you very much for everyone to doing that. Just so people know, the reason I've suddenly moved all these forces back is my intention is actually to run up here, I think, if I remember rightly, and to escape this well of death in the centre. You can see really in terms of my formation, I want to hold this choke point. I want to hold this choke point, so I'm trying to get over there as close as possible. And I've got these ones on the side here where I'm trying to remaneuver my units where I can see the sandwich coming in. The reason that my goblin archers are there are purely to place the stakes down. They will then flee for their lives. Right, so the attackers, what do they have? So we have the sandwiching force here, which is going to be controlled by Dreezy. You can see here he's got some Snaga Stalkers, he's got some Halberds, he's got some trolls of his own. There's all the snow trolls I was talking about. He's some Gunback Guard, he has some more Halberds, he has some Fellas, he has some Rich Realm Blackguard, and he does have the Witchers somewhere as well. Just going to go down to half... Oops. Just going to go down to half pace now while I do the rest of the compositions. His secondary force, which is the sandwich units, he's got them facing the other way, but he will turn them around relatively quickly. He's got some Marauders, Guardians of Khazad-dûm, he's got some Wargor Riders, some Halberds, some Fellas, some more Trolls, a lot of Trolls. Down then in the valley where the majority of the forces of the enemy lie, this is significantly controlled by another YouTuber called Gondorian Smith, so check out his channel if you want to see more Reforged. He has snow trolls, he has some Fellas, he's got some heavy infantry Fellas, that is, sorry. He's got some Marauders, Stalkers, Snaggers, Halberds, Fellas, he has some Walk Skirmishers of his own, and Trolls. Meanwhile, we also have Sin of the Dark Cloud joining us for this battle as well. He has Snow Trolls, he has Halberds, he's got Snaga Archers, Halberds, Marauders, and Marauders. So you can see that the forces themselves relatively similar in their setup, as I said before, and he has a final sort of pocket of units here, which, oh, look, Snow Trolls. Now, the reason we thought it was quite funny how many Snow Trolls they had, as you can see the Gunback Guard, and he's got some more Snuggers. The reason that we thought it was so funny is because we started talking about the scenario that we're in, which is that we didn't think, like I said, the Snow Trolls... We didn't think the Snow Trolls were going to lose in any shape or form to the Cave Trolls. So what we're talking about, the reason why Boromir's like, oh, they've got a Cave Troll, is not because he's worried by it. It's because actually they're on like... like an endangered species. Because of this rise of the Witch King wipes out so many cave and mountain trolls, then Sean Bean almost feels apologetic for the fact they might have to kill one of the last of its kind, because they're going to get routed so horribly here, and the snow trolls, as far as we were concerned, were probably going to be victorious. My battle lines then. So you can see here, put down some spikes here with the halberds being backed up by the heavy goblin infantry. Just trying to merge that bracing position there with the shield and boards units. I've got an archer unit here, backed up with one on the other side facing the other way. On the other side though, I don't have another halberd unit spare, so the black Uruks of the Mountain are going to have to try and hold that position, but I am going to support them with some fearmongerers, which we saw before, just to try and get into position, actually making that line very strong. But like I said, I was a bit concerned about how many forces they would be able to send that way. My Goblin King is just going to chill out for a bit. There he is with Azog the Defiler, sorry. He's just going to try and do his thing. And these cave trolls just being held in reserve. On the other side then, I move forward some heavy infantry to take on the additional assault from the snow trolls, which I'm trying to still get in position. My heavy goblin infantry haven't really formed up yet, but I am fortunate that he charges into this corner here, as I've got my Snaga skirmishers here on the top to try and rain down some javies. It's not the greatest view that they've got, but it is an okay one. They're not having too many go into the dirt, and I'm a little lucky here, because they aren't where I wanted them to be. They're not in the position I wanted them in. So the fact that they're getting throws off is quite fortunate, because I really wasn't ready for this charge. And so these guys are just lucky, I guess, that they're able to just lob them over. Especially if anyone's ever used javelins. They can be a little bit finicky at times, as you can see. The snow trolls starting to do work. I'm going to move up the time again a little bit faster. I don't want to go too fast because these battles are going to engage relatively quickly, and I'm going to have to scoot across the map a lot. Over on this far side then, we've got WK, who's having a big engagement here with Sin. Sin's pouring round the corner. He's ignoring this side here and not breaking up his forces, which I think is probably the right thing, as he charges headlong first into this battle here with some troll-on-troll action. So we've got probably about 60, I would have thought, cave trolls versus the same amount in terms of snow trolls. Mixed in among them, we've got some heavy goblin infantry, and we're going to start having the charges in now of the marauders supported there. Their forces, with WK sending more of his units in. This is going to be the mosh pit of mosh pits. And even there, you've got the trolls of Gundabad. WK does unleash a couple of his spearmen just to lock down these guys, and it does actually bring Sin to reposition his trolls of Gundabad to re-attack this force coming in, which I think is probably the right idea as more spearmen come through, probably trying to look to come through this angle here. In regards to the main assault though, again, you can see that actually it's going okay. The cave trolls aren't falling as quickly as we thought they would. They are helping to hold that position. And WK is being able to bring up some reinforcements to try and stop Sin from exposing his flank by going up this side hill here. It does make, and actually WK is bringing up some halberds, which is really going to help. But this is a mosh of moshes. It's lucky that neither side really has too many skirmishes to fire into here, because the friendly fire and kills. As you can see, Sin's now committing his Snaga archers who are actually coming forward, but where they'll fire into it, I don't know. If they do, they'll probably try and fire into these back lines as WK brings up more and more of his units, probably to block off this location from Sin's reinforcement army. Down then in the valleys below, I have left Crimson to his fate. I've decided that I didn't feel this was a good place to hold. It was quite a large zone, and I didn't really like it, so I kind of just let Crimson do his thing. Crimson really being overrun there, and he's doing the best he can to hold them. I think his halberds here are in formation, so they're going to get caught out unless he moves them quickly. His Snaga skirmishers, however, will not fall in the same vein. He's coming up here to join me up on this hillside, which I think is a smarter plan. I don't think that holding that valley is going to be advantageous. Down here, though, things were getting a little dicey. Those snow trolls were still here, so I submitted a number of my cave trolls, mostly the ones that were down in the valley themselves, just to try and muscle these guys out the way in advance of the rest of the formation working their way up the hillside. You can see that we didn't really actually kill any of the snow trolls here, mainly just taking out hit points, but taking out hit points might be enough. As you can see that I'm now repositioning my skirmer armor, Snaga skirmishers into a better into a better position behind the back lines to throw over the top, because I wasn't so sure of the position they were, and I bring over some goblin archers to try and work on these back lines here. Now the good news is they are wearing themselves down and getting themselves tired by coming up this hillside, and that's going to work in our favour. A couple of arrow shots coming. A couple of arrow shots coming in, then and some Javi shots. I think. Yeah. So I brought over my warg skirmishers to try and throw Javis now, and the Javis now coming in for those snow trolls being thrown over. So far, so good in terms of my goblin infantry. They're holding the line okay against these fellas, and actually, I think I'm bringing my wargs a little bit close now. You can see that I'm bringing over more and more cave trolls. Now, the reason why I'm bringing over all these cave trolls is that Dreezy is not assaulting me as quickly as I thought he would. So he is setting up units, but they're very slow. They're not making their way to their lines. And at this point, I'm feeling relatively confident. I've got some light skirmishers looking at me with some snow trolls. And on the other side, I've got very slowly walking towards me some marauders. So at this point, I feel relatively happy that this is my main concern. I need to hold this location, and so I'm just swarming it now, basically, as I reposition my goblin archers again. I'm just swarming this location, using the fear from the trolls to break these lines, to remove this infantry support, and just muscle these guys down. I need these guys off the battlefield. And I'm having some good success. I get a good chain route here, which I'm very happy with. It gives me a little bit of a breather. Meanwhile, in the centre, you can see that actually Crimson is doing the best he can to reform here and hold my back. And he's got a couple of his forces that are coming from the rear locations to support this and try and help keep himself going. The good news is that the opponents that he's coming up against are getting quite tired, although some of them are still fresh there. There's the Witch King himself on his mounted sort of force with his Inquisitors charging around. Obviously, he doesn't want to die. Most of the action then, apart from where I am, is happening here in the main centre. You can see WK's been able to work down that equal engagement with the Snow Trolls and come out victorious against them. Currently making Sin submit a lot of his forces to supporting his halberd line. Actually, it looks like WK is taking a moment to sit back here. I'm surprised he doesn't push up to support that. Meanwhile, his spearmen holding okay, but taking some heavy shots now from the archers from Sin. And his mountain berserkers, I think, are going to get put into the fray soon, as he does seem to be losing that battle on the side there. Meanwhile, along the other route into the battlefield, WK has sent some of his forces up to support these Blackback Mountain Berserkers. Now, they're all kind of going to skirmish mode, except for these Goblin Infantry and the Trolls. But I think Sin's probably smart enough to know that they're there, as his forces now, with the more Snow Trolls, start working their way around the mountain when they come to try and support this main engagement. Down in the valley, then again, you can see that Crimson really just trying to have maybe a couple of sacrificial units and then try and withdraw. It does look like his WK skirmish cav has been caught out by some Snow Trolls. They're going to have a little bit of trouble there. I think they're not going to win that battle. He should probably consider disengaging from that. However, the spears are holding okay, but more and more forces from Gondorian Smith are coming forward into that tight engagement, so they may not last very long. Heavy cavalry there being broken, however, that's going to really help. As over on the other side, Crimson, where most of his forces retreated to, is having much more luck here. The assault has now begun more fully on this far side, but actually what's happened is it's probably come too late. So these cave trolls are now leaving this location. I leave one force behind just as a sort of muscle unit, but I was able to take out the Snow Trolls and the rest of them went charging off down the hill, and I won't have to see them for a little bit of time. This allows me now to bring up the Horde to take on the forces that were sandwiching me. Now something quite interesting happens here. The Horde the Sandwich Horde doesn't really attack as well in time as they could do. Partly they didn't attack when Gondorian Smith is coming up the hillside, which was fantastic for me. But also the pressure doesn't seem to be happening in the way I thought it would. The Snow Trolls are coming through, admittedly, and they're breaking up my lines a little bit. But to be honest, I'm not feeling that Horde pressure. It's a one unit of Halberds that are out of formation, and some Starga, and having a Fear unit here backed up with the Black Uruks. I'm relatively happy here, and I don't think I'm even firing my archers, waiting for better targets. Here on the other side, he did send some Snow Trolls through to try and muscle my archers around, but now that I've got all my Cave Trolls here, it wasn't too much of a problem, and I wasn't too concerned about it. Still haven't moved my bodyguard. As you can see that these lines now, they are getting messed up, but the lines are getting messed up because of my own Cave Trolls, and they're just pushing these guys back. You can see that I broke them again just through sheer number of fear-making units, and there he is withdrawing back those forces. On the other side, you can see that Crimson is preparing himself to come to my aid. Some of those units he had in the back lines working their way forward. He's sending some of his Fearmongers on to go against the heavy Marauders, and I think that's a wise plan. He may just be doing one unit just to try and make it so it's not so obvious on the mini-map what he's got planning. So hopefully by the time that he breaks through, Dreezy doesn't realise is those rear forces won't last too long. He does have some Snow Trolls in reserve, and he does have some Guardians, but really he's starting to have some real trouble. He didn't break through this first line of heavy Goblin and Halberds, and now I'm just really now moving my forces to fight his next assault, because I was able to clear out the old one. So you can see here that we do have some fire shots coming in from my arrows, just trying to break some of these units. They're not as tired as the other ones though, so this isn't going as well, but it just adding to that the fear that the Mungerers are bringing in with some of those fire arrows there. With the Black Uruks of the mountain trying to take down some of these Snow Trolls and doing an okay job. They're not really threatened by any infantry really, so they can focus on the Trolls. Meanwhile, the Halberds are being shot at by my archers, and I'm feeling okay about this. This force hasn't really gathered up in the way they should do. And actually he has his reserves there, which he's having to now bring around one at a time. So much so that actually I feel happy to bring my Mountain Trolls over from my other line here. On the far side then, we can see that Crimson is now withdrawing slightly. He's going to try and help support me hold maybe this location here. Like I said, originally I placed spikes here and placed an infantry there just as a threat, but we're slowly having to turtle up slightly on this side. Now this does one thing to us which is problematic, which is breaking us apart, which is that me and Crimson are going to be on one side of the battlefield. And on the other side of the battlefield is WK just trying to hold out as he can against Sin. Now Sin is struggling here. His Witch Realm Blackguard now being committed, however. I think he's going to win this fight on this flank alongside his Halberds against these Spearmen and Infantry. But he's going to struggle to get through these couple of layers of Halberds here. He's just having to hold them back with his own Halberds while he just tries to reposition his archers to just try and soften them up a little bit. On the other side though, he's unleashed, I guess, the ambush force that WK had waiting for him, and he's doing okay. You can see there that what he's got some of his more elite troops in the front line with his Trolls, and they're starting to work on some of these guys, trying to break them, although they have going from wavering to shaken, back and forth, these heavy Goblin infantry. The Blackback Mountain Berserkers probably going to do okay. They are unlikely to break anytime soon, at least while they still have good numbers. On the far side, though, you can see he is starting to work his way round this flank. There's only a very thin line here of Goblin infantry still holding. And actually, Sin has even been able to get a couple of units behind. And there you go. There's the first of the breaking. There they are. So 70 troops there of heavy Goblin infantry breaking from that front line, leaving these Black Mountain Berserkers by themselves. And I think they'll start being focused down by Sin there, which can only be a good thing. Sin needs to come and join this battlefield, join this fight, get in behind WK, because if he can come through here, through this gully, he has a great opportunity to come into the back of these Halberds. So WK has to start pushing harder now through here, because he knows that his rear is going to get exposed soon. He does have some reserve forces, you can see them down here, and actually Crimson is having some routing units from that main valley, but most of the forces there are just withdrawing from the assault because it was just so extreme, because I basically left him out there. But again, I just didn't feel it was defendable. I didn't feel it was a good position. Meanwhile, Gondorian Smith's force is exhausted from charging around this valley. Absolutely tired. They are breathing hard as they start making up yet another hillside. So you can see we have withdrawn at this point. We've pulled back slightly. Crimson basically holding this line here. Some halberds and some infantry, although in a slightly strange formation, as he brings his Borg champions back through. And we start pulling back. On this side, everything's quietened down. And on the far side, I'm still holding here. And I'm actually sending over some more troops, but I am holding. I noticed he had some Witches of Angmar. You can see them out here. And I've said this before in the previous video. I really like this sort of deathly look. As you can see that they keep trying to get them ready for position to fire. But they aren't throwing for whatever reason. I actually told Dreezy that his Witches were probably a little bit exposed there. Because of the number of cave trolls I had, he needs to be careful because I could just charge through and get him. And I did tell him that. I said that I thought I'd be quite kind to him and not inform him of what was happening. As you can see, he does get a throw there, but actually he gets a fair bit of friendly fire. He does get one troll, which will help him, but actually that's not the kind of throw he wants. He wants something a bit more significant than that. Let's see if he gets any better this time round. As you can see, my archer's still trying to just pummel into those back lines of Orc fellows as my line of trolls now hold that front line there. You can see the Crimson bringing him some more for the other line. I'll show you there. We'll let them reload. They do have a long reload time, but we'll try and come back to them. You can see there I'm having quite a fun time with my trolls. And again, they did do very well against the snow trolls due to the changes in the way that their mass works. On the other side, things are really being mopped up. You can see that Crimson did push through the back lines of Dreezy there. Just wasn't able to hold. And then it basically became that Dreezy had to try and push through my halberds and had to try and charge through my front line to try and break through and break free. But it just wasn't enough. I just had too much now at this point that I could pull from other locations. And because I knew that in time my ally was going to come, all I had to do was hold the location. You can see I'm actually quite thin, especially over here where I'm having to use my goblin infantry just to hold this flank. But at this point, because it's all sort of spearheaded in this location, I'm feeling a little bit happy and actually send some archers in which have run out of ammunition. My bodyguard there just kind of watching. Just kind of doing his thing. He'll let the fodder die first. My skirmishers out of ammunition as well. I was going to have them. There's a good shot. That's a bit more like it. Burns a couple of them. But again, it's a little bit late now. There's just not enough of them. As I send these goblin archers forward, I pull back the skirmishers. I think I was going to start doing some cycle challenges, but maybe I thought less of it. I do have some breaking happening though off the back of the witches. But at this point, I kind of felt that I'd given Dreezy enough opportunities here as that final shot goes off against my archers, and I feel that's probably enough fairness that I could give him before I punish him for leaving these guys exposed against so many trolls. As you can see, I start now just working him down. The thing is though, the witch is actually quite good at taking down the cave trolls. I was quite surprised by this. Though low on number, they actually have quite a good skill and quite a good damage, and they actually start poking these guys quite well. I lose a little bit more than I'd like. You can see that there's 3 of them on the floor already, and I thought, wait a second, and they're just walking out. They're quite happy to just leave. I was a little shocked. I kind of thought, well, how's this happening? Maybe I should be pleased that he's trying to leave. And I actually sent a second unit of trolls in to try and take him on, because I was like, wait a second, what's going on here? But I do rout some of these guys. I am starting mopping my way through. Just for clarification, again, this was the very first time we did this scenario. So this was a testing scenario. There has been changes already before anyone says this was a really undoubted scenario. This is just the very first attempt. We didn't know how it would go. And like I said, we all thought the snow trolls were going to beat the cave trolls. The fact that the cave trolls beat the snow trolls was something that none of us had prepared for or expected. As we zoom in here to see the forces of Gundadad now pushing up against Crimson's units here. But we just didn't see it coming. We just didn't believe that they would lose. And the Snow Trolls did, and that was sort of a significant portion of Gundabad's army locked down by ours, and on a one-on-one basis we were winning. So that was really what was causing them problems. And like I said, now that they've got the problem of the exhaustion, as Crimson starts moving his halberds up, I think that actually I've just left like a little bit of a token force here, as the Witch Realm Inquisitors kind of poke around the corner to see if they can get up and think better of it and go back down the hill again. As you can see, a couple of his units trying to consider about coming around this flank, hoping I might withdraw from it. I do withdraw some of my skirmishers. Noticing, however, he comes back, I think I pause them and put them back where they were, allowing my Snaga skirmishers basically to fire on the far side and just kind of throw here instead. I think I get some okay lobs into this bulk here, mainly just targeting these snow trolls, whilst Crimson brings his own over. You can see there he's got quite a few. So yes, the Witch Realm Inquisitors did charge, but they did get some Snaga skirmishers throwing into their backs, but failed a couple, but they did okay otherwise. Back over to the other side of the battle then, we can see that WK's fight is starting to slow down a little bit. Sin's force is breaking a little, but he does have some units here now fighting back to back, I think. Yeah, it's his Witch Realm Blackguard. I guess they tried to go for a rear flank, but they've just been surrounded now with archers on one side and a spearman on the other. I think he was just trying to clear those archers out. His reserve force now did break through, and they now, unfortunately though, too late to support this flank. So actually what could have been a nice crushing flanking maneuver hasn't paid off entirely, and Sin's now going to get bogged down against some spears and the remnants of the Berserker forces that WK has as fire arrows start raining in from 2 units back there. They are going to have a response though from Sin's Snaga archers, sort of repaying the favour. As you can see, a couple of arrow lobs being shot over. I think there must be another archer unit maybe somewhere, or it's just the back lines are having to lob up because they're not getting the line of sight that they want. Sin starts pouring in more forces to try and get through this location, but they look pretty thick, and that's with 2 Cs in terms of this position. And I think that WK's going to hold that for a while, as it now just becomes a little bit of a tug of war. WK shooting some of his own units in the back there. Does still have some missile skirmishers. I think they're probably out of ammunition though, and he is bringing some halberds over. That'll be unfortunate for Sin if that should happen, as last of his units there break. On the other side then, you can see that it is proving difficult for Gondorian Smith. He actually has another break, unfortunately, just because of the sheer amount of time they've been fighting for and how tired they are against the fear units of the Mountain Trolls. This is something to not be underestimated. Manatee Mountain's ability to cause fear. They are considered to be one of the better factions in this latest patch because of that. Now, I think they are having some slight changes in the hotfix. I think fire arrows are definitely having a change in the hotfix. So we see the first of the generals fall. I think that's Sin of the Dark Clouds general there being surrounded by those spearmen. But I think in the hotfix, fire arrows are being changed, and I have a feeling that fear units might get a slight change as well, just because Misty Mountains have proven it to be such a strong counter to a lot of things, unless you have eagle units to counteract that. You can see on this side we're mainly mopping it up, which is kind of chilling out a little bit, letting our units rest up. You can see that I had a bit of a skirmish back and forth here with some of the Snagas on this side. I actually got an okay number of them before they got to do anything with my archers, as some of these forces now routing away. I think actually I unleashed my wargs at some point to try and support that. You can see actually what's happening here is Dreezy and Gondorian. I think Gondorian are starting to just kind of gather up their forces where they still have some alive. I think he's using his general there to hopefully try and stop some of them from routing, try and bring them back from the battlefield so they haven't completely shattered. And it looks like Crimson has some forces here that have just been caught out, but they did take out a snow troll, so maybe it wasn't too bad for them. But relatively victorious on this side. It was very difficult for the attackers to get up the hillside. Our heavy goblin infantry held up really well, backed up with the fear-breaking units of the trolls. On the other side then, we're really just now looking at seeing what happens with Sin and WK. Now without his general though, these fear effects are going to become worse. You can see he is starting to lose some of his Snaga stalkers back there, and the archers trying to do what they can whilst his elites fight there. So, I can tell you already for a start in terms of changes to the scenario, a lot of the heavy goblin infantry have become light goblin infantry instead, and a lot of the fear units have been changed around. So, and I think that I'm pretty sure that I actually lose my black-back berserkers as well that held that line against part of the sandwich is one of the major changes. Excuse me. As well as getting some buffing to the attacking forces to make up for the difficulties that they find. It's going to be probably a situation, I would say, now where the attacker's probably in a good position to win quite handily. What I would say as well, it's the first time that we'd ever played this scenario, so some people we were all seeing it for the first time, and being a defender is a lot easier than being an attacker in a map that you've never seen before. More arrows coming through there, but I don't think they're hitting much but the dirt at this point. Maybe a couple hits into the back lines of the main front line, and a couple of shots going into the archers, although Sin still having a very good response, but the heavy goblin infantry just soaking it up a little bit, although a couple of them dropping there. Again, like I said, they become light goblin infantry in the new version, so it's going to be very difficult for the Misty Mountains to have much chance to win. We're just going to fast forward a little bit now, back up to full speed, so you can see what it would be like if you were here in real time. So the fight here kind of coming to a close, and it's anyone's game really. What's happening is WK is just going to push through just to try and silence these archers, I suspect. Try and break up the formation and try and rout the units that Sin has left, because he doesn't have that general anymore. In the main battlefield then, again, like I said, they're trying to bring their forces over. I think what they want to do is kill WK and take his location and make us come over to them. So they've kind of got some forces here, but they're not forces that are engaging us. I think they're really just trying to pull back. You can see these units here withdrawing from the flanking charge they were going to do. You can see some of them just trying to leave the battlefield. We'll try and chase them down later just to try and stop them from coming back. But yeah, I think what they're going to do now is they're quite happy to leave us here. Now that they've split us in half quite successfully, they have no real interest to assault this defensible location, which I can't blame them. I wouldn't want to either. So on the far side, it's really about now WK having to watch himself. As you can see there, he got charged, I think, in the back by the Witch Realm Inquisitors. And I think he's going to get charged again on his general's unit now. Like I said, what's happening here is an attempt to kill WK, take his highly defensive location and make us come to them. But it's probably too late at this point. As well as, I think, trying to save Sin. But Sin has now admitted defeat. His forces have now all routed. There was an opportunity, I think, of some of them coming back. But I think that they would be so disheartened that even if they did come back, they wouldn't be able to hold on, as the last of his forces there, 17 and 8, make their way to fight another day. Or they did rout some halberds before they went. So there is something to be said about that. Not much then left in WK's force. Sin and WK basically fighting it out until there was almost nothing left. And the Witch Realm Inquisitors need to be a little bit careful now that they don't get caught out by themselves and the Witch King doesn't die, thus ending whatever hopes that they had. As they now continue again to charge in for Azog. Making an okay charge into his side, actually. So they do get him there all by himself. He seems a bit nonplussed by it, of all things. He doesn't seem to be too bothered. The Witch King there with his mace charging about. Nope, he just doesn't really care. Happy to stay where he is. On this far side then, we do start skirmishing them, start firing some arrows into them, which forces... there you go, you can see them being fired off against those halberds, which are tightly formed. So I've chosen them as the target. It's pretty much all she wrote at this point. There's not really much left that these guys can do. We still have so many units surviving that it's and that we keep bringing over, that we basically got to the point where we'd agreed that it was kind of all she wrote, to coin a phrase that that J Monster likes to use. As I continue to pepper these halberds with arrows. As you can see, some of the units starting to break now as I bring more and more of these trolls in. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go over to where the final fight will take place, which is where these units now start to try and kill WK to take some form of vengeance. And actually gets a pretty good charge off against those Goblin infantry, almost breaking them, in fact, from it. So hope is not completely lost, but there's only... Oh god, excuse me. Cannonball keeping me up at nights, I'm afraid. Only a fool's hope anyway. As he continues to try and cycle charge some of these smaller units like these archers, just to try and kill some of them off in advance of his main unit arriving. WK bring the last of his troops down off the hillside. As you can see, not much. Very little left between WK and Sin in terms of numbers. WK just trying to take out that cavalry as best he can with whatever units has left, whilst the Witch Realm Blackguard now come in for the assault, and actually probably do be quite happy with this engagement. As actually they work quite well in tandem. They force WK to charge, and then they rear charge his general's unit. I'm actually surprised his general's unit held up so well against that. Didn't even go down to shaking. But having said that, they are starting to die. So I suppose that's something else to be said about it. As you can see now the Gundabad Guard get committed, and the remaining forces there from WK. So we'll just slow down slightly as we watch this action. You see the forces now just trying to fight alongside one another. You can see there that the Inquisitors continue to try and get those rear charges off, especially against some of these smaller, more depleted troops at the back. Just trying to cycle into them, which is what I would do as well. This line should hold, and really it's about saving as many lives as he can. So he wants to try and kill these guys as quickly as possible, and breaking them will be just as valuable as killing them at this point, if he can pull them off the battlefield. Another charge coming in. Not as impactful as before, but it does look like... Did it break them? I thought it might have done. It's getting... Yes, he has. He's broken the infantry. It's causing... I thought it was going to cause a chain rout. It looks like it might do. Possibly. They're wavering. They're breaking through the troops, and there goes the general's unit. So he's broken the general's unit now. I think it's just the general left, in fact. Yes, he is. So as of the filer, running off on his lonesome, leaving his forces behind. There he is. He doesn't quite know where he wants to go. He's turned around and come back again for some reason, but I don't think he means to do that. I think he's going to get charged down now. They're going to get him? They're trying. There he goes. At least he died from the front rather than stabbed in the back. These forces now are going to reposition themselves on the hillside, and they're going to take up location waiting for us as we start sending over the cave trolls and the mountain trolls. You can see just here over to one side my wargs now just trying to work down some of these fleeing units, stop them from returning to the battlefield. WK ironically starts some spearmen out here. I think they must have broken and then come back, because I can't remember ever seeing them do anything else over there. So there you go. Mechanics working kind of as they're intended, in the sense that once broken, it's not the end of the road. They do sometimes return, as we start rushing our troops that are now also exhausted across the battlefield to take on the enemies at the last stand. But really, at this point, we've probably got enough trolls that we don't need the infantry anymore. It can just be a troll fight. So Gundabad now just trying to get to the position that they're happy with. I think what they're going to do is they're going to sit themselves here, from what I remember. And we'll just wait for them to form up. Whilst you can see coming over the hill. What's that coming over the hill? Is it a monster? Kind of. It's a lot of mountain trolls that have survived their engagements and done very well for themselves. As you can see, these guys trying to now form up to take and brace themselves for it. But how you brace yourselves for a charge of that many trolls, I don't know. In this case, what they're doing is they're going further up the hillside. And I don't blame them. I think what they think is there's a slightly tighter, narrow location there. And since they don't have any archers, they don't need to have the open field location. Is he going to get into position in time before the charge gets there? He might do. He's certainly going to get his Witcher on Blackguard in position. The Gundabad Guard maybe less so. As you can see, there they are. There's the Crimson's Trolls. I do have some Trolls. I don't know where my Trolls are. My Trolls are obviously being a bit sluggish and slow. As now they kind of slightly more leisurely pace come to join the main fights. And let's see as they get engaged and probably throw a bunch of these guys around. Oh wait, hold on, no, my apologies. I think they reline back up before they do it. Anyway, here they go. And they do get countercharged slightly. Two of the Mountain Trolls just walking straight through into the back lines. And there goes the Witch King, unfortunately. I think we do end up playing on... Oh, no, we don't actually play on. We don't need to play on because the Witch King's dead. So, there you have it. Not the closest of battles in the end. Mainly because we didn't realise how powerful that additional mass was. And the couple, I think it's about 5 extra units of trolls you get in a cave troll and mountain control compared to the snow troll. But again, the stats made it look like in paper that the snow trolls were going to be unstoppable. Has been changed around slightly now, is a little bit different. I want to thank everyone who joined the battle and who played. I'll just have a look at the statistics for you so you can see what it looks like. You can see there the casualties. My bodyguard didn't really do anything. My archers doing very well for themselves, actually. I was very impressed with the value from my goblin archers. Fearmonger is also doing well along with the halberds. They had a very good position. Again, heavy goblin archers doing well. One of my infantry units taking a lot of casualties and not doing anything. So that was unfortunate there. Not sure what that was all about. And you can see the mountain trolls doing pretty well for themselves, getting a good number of kills, one of them breaking 100. And the black Uruks of the mountain there. Just going to scroll down, see if there's anything of interest to point out. Goblin spears there, 274. Not something you normally see from a spear unit. This is the Dunland spear, so this is the ones that WK was controlling. 193, did very well for themselves. His cave trolls, phenomenal. 268 and 201 respectively. That's fantastic. His Warg Riders, however, less so on 5. And then the final army here. Black Orcs of the Mountain, 231. Black Mountain Berserkers, 335. And that's the kind of value for money that you can get out of those guys if you play them right. So there you have it. It was a victory for the Misty Mountains. The Witch King will have to go back and lick his wounds and come back with a better force in a second test of the scenario. Again, just to reiterate, this is just a test of it to show you behind the scenes, the kind of battles we go through, the kind of decisions and conversations we have, and the kind of things that you might expect to see in the future. I hope you enjoyed the sneak peek. Thank you very much for all the support as always. If you want to join us, then please do so in the Discord below. I know a lot of people have been asking about things like battles and about the RPG campaign. A lot of that is on a slight hold whilst the hotfix is being completed. So please just bear with us while we get the hotfix done. With such a large mod with so many things, it is easy for us to miss out a couple of things and come back. We are expecting that to be very soon, however. I'm hoping that the sound quality and the video quality was okay for everybody today. Obviously, your feedback is always welcome. And that is it from me. So I've been me, you've been you. This has been Reforged. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.